Are you the Wolfman?
I'm just an ordinary average guy.
Some people call me the space cowboy.
I am paying for this microphone.
Some people call me Maurice.
There's a great, big, beautiful world out there. And here I sit, sucking on popsicles.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Imbasciani Chronicles, hosted by me, Mike Imbasciani, here in Southwest Florida. It is good to be back. This is episode 3, so thank you so much for listening to the pilot and to episode 2 and hanging out with us here, wherever you're listening to it. Hopefully, by now it might be on Spotify or some of the other sites, but at least on Anchor.fm and also on the Anchor app, as well as Apple Podcasts. And if you are listening on Apple Podcasts, I'd greatly appreciate it if you rate the show and leave a review. It certainly helps me out. It'll get me pushed up so people can actually see that this podcast exists. So thank you so much for listening. And with episode 3 here, I wanted to start bringing in the guests. And now this is a man, and he is a man now. I've known him since we were both just little boys. And since we were both 5 years old, we've been friends. And we've seen the roads we've taken. And no matter what, we've been friends through all these years. And personally, I would have thought he'd be, playing on the USA soccer team. But he had to settle for the next best thing, which is a medical student about to become a doctor. So without further ado, the very first guest on the Imbasciani Chronicles, we give it up for Marcus Nash, everybody.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I really couldn't top that introduction if you paid me. It's a pleasure to be on. I don't know if there are any blues rockers aficionados around, but a long time ago we did a radio show and Mike brought me on then and we had a great time. So
Oh, yeah.
we just had to do it again, but now the little more upgraded equipment.
Yeah, right. Finally in the podcast sphere here. What was that? How many years ago did it say that was? 5 years, 6 years ago?
Yeah, I remember I was a senior in high school. I remember pretty well. And that show was fun. And I think... So we would basically, it was music, right? You would just play some songs for whoever was out there listening
on the internet radio station,
and we would just hang out and talk and listen to some interesting music. So
yeah, and so that's kind of why I wanted to bring you on today. And for those of you who don't know, I'm 23 years old, and you're 23 now too, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
yes, sir.
Man, we are getting old, and it's always interesting because when we were growing up, obviously I was always into the music thing because I started playing when I was 5. But, you could always run faster than everybody else. So you went into sports.
Not anymore. I was about 50 pounds lighter. Actually, more than that, maybe.
Yeah, right, yeah. And so you were into the sport thing, which I was never an athlete. But, we kind of went down those different paths. I was homeschooled. You went to public school. And so we were friends and we had the same interests, but we were on different roads, different things. And it was funny because I think it was once you started college, you reached out to me and you were like, hey, I have a guitar now. I see what you've been doing for all of these years. I mean, how old were you when you got that guitar, and what kind of drove you to get into that?
Well, I remember my introduction to music in general was kind of like a lot of people, where their parents or a family member kind of wants you to play piano, or they're like, pick an instrument, like keep yourself out of trouble.
Yeah.
So definitely when I was around, I don't know, 6 or 7 or 8 in that area, my parents wanted me to play piano, and they had like this old ratchety piano that was my great grandmother's, And so I started playing piano on that, and I took some lessons for a while, and I just absolutely hated it because I was always one of those kids who, now I was always good in school, and I would kind of sit down and behave and did all my work and did well in school. But outside of that, if you wanted me to do something and I didn't want to do it, there was no way.
It wasn't going to be done. Yeah.
It was going to be done to the lowest.
Just
point.
Enough to get by with it. Yeah. Well, and so that did that drive you away from music just a little bit because it wasn't something that interests you, or you want to be outside, run around on the soccer field, right?
Yeah. Actually, I think my mic has lost audio.
little technical difficulties. But as you were saying, yeah, you know, you kind of had that first exposure to music, and it wasn't something that really interests you, so you kind of headed more towards the sports realm. And
Yeah, well, for me, it was more of a fact that I was forced to do it. So I think a good advice for any parents listening would be don't force your kid to do something because it already removes some of the fun. And that's what I felt like was the biggest drawback for me, because and also the way that music is taught is something that didn't appeal to me, because it was very much like, okay, we're going to open up the book and we're going to start from the first song, and you might not like this song, but you're going to learn it.
This is a C, this is a A. Yeah.
And now that when I came back to experimenting with playing guitar, you know, around maybe my junior or sophomore year, because I didn't tell you I was playing because I wanted to make sure I could at least show up with a little
Hey, you taught me that bit of a song from Star Wars, so it worked out.
Yeah. I needed to at least get the very bare minimum before I could reveal my secret. But so when I came back later to guitar of my own volition, I approached it more of like, oh, I want to like learn this song, or I want to learn how to create music from a more creative standpoint.
Right. Yeah, because it turns into, I like this kind of music. I like this song. I want to learn this song. What is it going to take for me to learn that song?
Yeah.
And that's what helps you learn the initial theory stuff, chords and what's what. And then you have a better appreciation of it, I think, as opposed to just being told, learn this. Why? Well, because I'm telling you to learn it.
Yeah.
You have to eventually do that anyway, but it's just how you get to it. And what I always thought was interesting is you showed me a lot of music that I had never heard of. You know, I'm really into history, so I might look more back to the older stuff while you were hearing music more in the indie scene.
Yeah, and
which exposed me to that.
That's an interesting point, because I feel like some of the kind of music that you speak about, you know, especially in your pilot episode, if you haven't listened to that yet, go ahead and go back and listen to that.
Yes,
because Mike's really interesting, and he gives a great, you know, history of him and his influences in music. But I feel like there was maybe a period between, you know, when the folk rock was really popular, and then it kind of evolved into more rock and roll, and then maybe at least in the popular and for younger people, then maybe into heavy metal like Metallica, that kind of range,
right? And
then it goes from there into more, I don't know if I would describe it as like punk, and you get bands like Nirvana,
and
then
the late 80s, early 90s. It kind of shifted back from the heavier, louder scene, where it was still heavy music, but it's like they put an acoustic guitar in their hands and said, here, now do this instead. And, you know, Nirvana with the MTV show and stuff like that, it kind of brought the music back down, and I think that helped create the beginning of the indie scene, which took the idea of punk and that 90s grunge, I guess you'd call it, and with the beginnings in what was originally folk music.
Yeah, I think it almost went full circle, and especially when streaming services came around, because now and MySpace was huge, because that was the original, you know, post your music on MySpace and
hope somebody listens to it.
It's basically like a complete, you know, crawl from the top. Everybody's on an even level. You know, it doesn't matter if you have a record label. You know, you had a chance of being signed when the internet came around and you could share your music, but. You know, when I was when I was probably in middle school, I was into like My Chemical Romance and kind of like the punk, the really angsty. Angsty,
it's like, I'm a teenager. I got the teenage angst,
preteen,
man.
not even a teenager, preteen. And then from there, I became interested in folk music. Like, I know we share an interest in like the Hozier album from 2013, 2014, maybe 2015, and then around that time, like artists like James Blake.
And
Bon Iver.
Bon Iver, yeah, exactly. Well, and you said it during that time and the birth of the internet. You know, when we talk about indie music, people forget that means independent,
right?
And that's what it was. Is people didn't have to worry about being attached to a label. People could go out and, like I'm doing with this podcast, do it yourself, put it out there yourself, and make something of it yourself. And it obviously there's pros and cons. The con being it oversaturates the market with everybody and everything. But it really birthed that indie scene of, hey, I have an acoustic guitar, I have a microphone that halfway works, I can get a recording done, and if I can build my fan base and build who I am, I don't have to owe anybody anything. And there's that independence in it that I think is really important.
Exactly, and I think that's a good point, because I think technology was huge too, because once you could get, recording software that was industry level, but you could do it in your back room, it was over, because it sounds just as good. So now it's not, it's a matter of just putting yourself out there, and do you have the talent and the luck? A lot of it is luck.
Oh yeah, all of it is who you know, and if you're willing to, it's all about willing to put in the time, effort, and energy to do it, because they say you need 10,000 hours in something to be good at it. I'm pretty sure I've done that with guitar since I was 5, and it pays off if you're willing to keep it going. It can turn into something, especially if you do actually have the talent to go somewhere with it. And it inspires people like you to, hey, maybe pick up an acoustic guitar and try to learn what they're doing.
Yeah, 100%. And the other thing with kind of, folk music, or just, I would even call it just simpler music, like just a guy and his guitar and an old shack in the woods,
It's like Americana, country, bluegrass, original blues music started the same way.
Right. It's so much more approachable than like the heavy, highly produced popular music, popular rock music of the 80s and maybe the 90s and before, because now, you can learn this song and you can sound, if you put in the work and the practice, almost as good as the person who wrote it.
Yeah, and that's kind of the thing I've seen lately is you do have those two variances. You have the Taylor Swift, who just dropped a new record, extremely produced, so much production goes into that, so much money, so much everything goes into that. And then you can have something so simple as just an acoustic guitar and just play a couple songs and release it. It's still on iTunes, it's still on everything else that all the Taylor Swift stuff is on. It's just getting the name out there and the recognition and eventually the money, but just to get your stuff out there. Anybody can do it now, which is a good thing and kind of a bad thing, but it's a good thing for the people who are the creative types to do that.
Yeah, 100%. And
yeah. So I guess one of the other big things is when we were both little and I continued the music and you continued in high school and now college, is you are a medical student. So congrats. Sooner or later, I'm going to start calling you Dr. Nash.
Please don't. Dr. Nash is my father.
Yeah, and grandfather. But, I think, and I've met a lot of people that say music can be a very powerful thing, a very healing thing. I've gone a couple times to the Golisano Children's Hospital in Fort Myers and play some music for the kids in there and to try to lift their spirits. And I think it can help both ways, not only the people who are sick who can use it, but, for somebody like you who's going into a field that I'm sure can be very stressful. I'm not even going to try to imagine, what, even in your studies right now, do you find music and your guitar is just a way of, relaxing and kind of freeing your head a little bit?
Yeah. Well, first of all, it's, it's awesome that you're going around playing in the hospitals and stuff. And it's a shame that, I think people would really need it right now, but unfortunately, it's not really possible to do that. But and I know Andrew, Andrew's a mutual friend of ours, but I think he started something up where he goes to school, which was a music and medicine type program. So there's a rich history of physicians who were talented and played instruments and integrated instruments into their career and allowed their patients to benefit from some of their talents. And I'm not as talented as they are, so I don't know if any of my patients would be, willing to sit there and listen to me
you
playing
make them
them
feel
guitar.
better when you stop.
Right.
See, it could be worse, man.
but so for me, the music is really and playing guitar is really something that I use as a as what you said, to de-stress.
Yeah.
And where I am right now, everything I do is learning, and it's very regimented. So I feel like it helps as a creative outlet in terms of, during the day, especially the past 2 years, which have been more like didactic or book learning and less on the job. A lot of times I would be sitting at my computer for hours on end, watching lectures, kind of being talked to, trying to absorb information, very science heavy.
Just sit there and take down all the information.
Right. Learning biochemical pathways, stuff like that. Medicine can be very, very regimented and lacks a sense of creativity, at least on the front end when you're learning it. And guitar helped so much in terms of I feel like there's a basic human need to have some kind of creative outlet.
Oh yeah.
And I think a lot of people haven't found their creative outlet, and maybe they experience some kind of like need to go out and, whether it's paint or play guitar or just do something, invent something. I feel like that's a very basic human, component from even like maybe the caveman times where we were just.
Well, yeah, you got to keep your hands busy. You got to do something that, everybody one way or another has to have a job. A job is a job, and they call it a job because it's not fun. If it was fun, they call it fun.
Yeah.
And so I think you're right. Monday through Friday, whatever your schedule is, you have a job, and whenever you're off, you want to be able to obviously have the days where you're just laying back, relaxing, but also have the days where you can find the thing you're truly passionate about and use that as a creative outlet, whether it is painting or guitar or going on a boat or whatever.
Yeah. But I think there is something unique about playing music in terms of there's almost like an instant tactile feel of you hit the note and then a sound comes out. And especially if you're kind of just free form trying to make something up, you're like, okay, so it's instantaneous creation. Whereas, and I think painting kind of is that too, but I really like the aspect of the sound. I like the feel of the guitar and the for me, the visual stuff is nice, but painting a picture, first of all, I'm a terrible artist. Terrible. I have some good artists in my family, but I did not get that gene. But yeah, it's definitely the audio component for me.
Well, and I think you just said it. Some people are going to be different than others, but it's nice to be able to have that. I'm sure there are tons of people out there who wish they could play the guitar and who are excellent painters, But you're right. Certain things will do it for certain people, And same thing with the certain type of music you're playing. You could be playing, Simon and Garfunkel will go, it just doesn't do it for me. You put on some Metallica, you're like, that makes me feel so calm inside. and that's just the thing, is finding your thing out there that gives you that creative outlet. Now, I think I'm lucky, and I'm sure you feel lucky too, to find something you're passionate about that you can turn into a job. You're already third generation doctor to be, so that's in the blood right there. But for me, the music, I always enjoyed playing music, and it does become a job in certain aspects because you got to deal with people. You got to, there's always something you got to deal with. But I play because when I'm playing, you're playing for people. You're people come out to see me or go out and see any band to forget about their life, essentially for 3 or 4 hours, just to sit back, relax, enjoy some music, and enjoy, certain songs that, especially if they're older folks, bring them back to the time when they first heard that song. Yeah. And that's their creative outlet, is to go out and experience something like that. Yeah, like what you're describing.
And that's something that, when I've gone to some of your shows and your fans absolutely love you. Like, you have some of the most dedicated fans who come out, and that's what when I imagine what it's like to be, performer. And I've gotten to kind of watch you and see how you go about it. What a lot of people, I feel, don't realize is the amount of work that it takes in terms of scheduling, acquiring gigs, putting yourself out there. There's a whole entrepreneurial aspect
Yeah.
to your job that people might not realize. So for you, it's like you're doing your job, and then your job also has this like
All these other little mini jobs,
right,
behind
mini
it.
jobs behind them. And then, but what you like the most is kind of you get this through all your work setting up and making connections. You get to go out and reap the rewards of it and perform and have people, get enjoying, the craft that you took so many years to perfect.
Well, right. Yeah. I mean, that's the whole thing. That's the bottom line is all of that, whether some of it is aggravating or not, especially, I mean, during this COVID time here, losing over 50 gigs. But the gigs I do have mean that much more because the people who weren't able to go out all that time are like, finally, we get to go out and hear some music. We get to go out and see our favorite band again, and then on my end, it's finally I get to go out and play the music for the people again. And it's just a huge connection that you make.
Yeah, and I think that's a component that people might not realize, during the kind of the lockdown time, is that there is, as much as you might try to ignore it, there is this need for humans to go out and enjoy themselves, and you really notice how fundamental it is when you can't do it.
Oh yeah.
When you're locked in your house and you're getting cabin fever and you're irritable, fighting with your loved ones, and you're like, man. So there's definitely like this fundamental need to go out and be entertained, right?
And have that creativeness somewhere in life.
Right. And that's true because not everyone has the time to have a hobby. Some people are working their butts off every day, and they come home, from a very labor intensive job, and they can't move. They're ready to get in bed, make some dinner, and go to sleep, and they don't have time for a hobby. So it's important that, when they do get time, or when people do get time, that they have somewhere they can go to feel like they can participate in that creative experience.
Yeah, I agree. And that's kind of the whole thing is those people in general, that's why I play too, is for them. If they're so busy all the time, they get that Saturday night off, and maybe they got to work on Sunday morning, they still go out on that Saturday night to enjoy the time off and enjoy the time. So let me ask you this too. What do you talk about the creativity that you get? What are some of the artists that you draw that creativity from, or like get that inspiration from?
Yeah, I think kind of some of the artists that we mentioned earlier. In terms of, picking a handful of artists off the top of my head, I feel like I can't quite point to any one artist. In terms of just genre, I really enjoy just sitting down with the guitar and taking components from any kind of music. I know you introduced me heavily into like Americana, and I enjoy when sometimes when I hang out with Mike, I'll like, hey Mike, give me some homework.
Else you got? Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm always asking him for homework, because for me it's hard to find, because I don't have a heavy musical background in terms of music lessons, music theory. It's hard for me to access, what information is for me, what level am I at, and how can I improve to learn new music.
Yeah.
So, when you give me artists to listen to and songs that you think are in my level, that's something that I enjoy to experiment. And then I feel like I can pick pieces of songs and then just go about and do my own thing. And that's what I get the most joy from, is just sitting down and just having some of the tools that I've gained from learning songs and then applying them to create something entirely new, and just messing around on the guitar, really.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that's the way it should be, with in terms of learning music. You find whether it's us having a conversation about a new band, or like last time we were talking about the band, talking about The Last Waltz and the documentary Once Were Brothers. And actually I want to do a show coming up soon where we kind of dissect those, either the documentary, the new one, and the concert itself. And I think it'd be funny maybe have you back on too, and we can kind of get the musician's perspective and the musician to be perspective.
Well, there you go. That's some homework for me. A nice documentary to
exactly.
watch.
Yeah.
Actually, right now I'm watching the documentary. Well, it's on Netflix now. That's why I'm watching The Last Dance, which is the Michael Jordan documentary.
Oh yeah.
Did you see it?
I have not. No.
Oh, it's interesting.
Yeah.
And you might not be a basketball fan, and I'm not really a basketball fan, but the level to which he was a competitor is something that's interesting to everyone. This was.
Well, right. That's the kind of thing that appeals to everybody, and just to see the journey that these people take, and that's why I wanted, when I did my pilot, just to kind of introduce myself to who I am and what I've done over the years. It's the same sort of thing where, obviously I'm not Michael Jordan, but you listen to his story, and everybody's story starts the same way. It's about putting in the hard work and the dedication and willing to say, listen, this is what I want to do. And they say you work on your passion hard enough and you never work a day in your life, and you're able to make money at something you really enjoy. It's just the matter of putting in that time, effort, and commitment to it.
I think it's so true. And I'm sure you had kind of your experience where, maybe you wanted to achieve something in music really badly, and you had kind of like a burning passion to like maybe learn something.
Still working on difficult. Madison Square Garden.
Right. Yeah. Maybe it's coming up, but I feel like whenever somebody wants to kind of like achieve something that kind of sets them apart, there's always like maybe a year or two where they really put in extraordinary, true 110%, and then they see themselves improve over the people around them, and then that's when they can make that leap to the next level. For me, that was like studying in college and getting the grades and the scores to go up into medical school. For a musician, it might be learning it's some very difficult music piece, or playing at such a level that they gain over the course of a couple of years, that they gain recognition at a show or something like that, where they get, or an athlete, they practice and practice over the course of a year after they were told, no, you're not good enough, and then they get scouted. And I feel like that component is really important to setting, or at least from the documentary, that kind of stuck out to me as something that was important in general life in terms of achieving something.
Yeah, I agree. And you just said it too, is a couple of years, I think, and I'll get your opinion of this too. And again, all of everything discussed on this show is of my and my guest's opinion. Don't hold anything against us or you or anything, and it's just our opinions. I do not own any music or any of the things we're talking about. We're just talking about them because we like them.
He's telling you all not to sue us.
Please don't.
or no nasty comments either.
Right. And so keep it clean out there. And I want your opinion of this too. I think one of the biggest problems for people is social media, because everything is right there. Everything is, and again, there's pros and cons to everything, but when you see people out there living their Instagram lives, how great everything seems to be, oh, we just got this book deal, oh, this album just came out, oh, we're making these millions of dollars over here, oh, Michael Jordan, my documentary just dropped, all these great things. I think that can be discouraging to people sometimes. And I'm here to say, too, that as a musician in the life that I'm leading, I have found over the years, and I've been playing professionally now for 12 years now, which is hard to believe. And that's with playing guitar itself even longer.
Right.
I have found that things happen every 5 years. Whether it's a new set of gigs at a bigger venues, being able to finally play at the House of Blues. Last year we had 227 gigs, when the year before, I had 150. And that's the kind of growth that doesn't happen immediately. Right. It happens through the dedication, to the hard work, through the understanding of you're always going to have setbacks. And I think that's something that people right now need to hear too, because this is one big setback for a lot of people with all the COVID not going on. And there's going to be really high mountains and really low valleys for people, especially if you're an entrepreneur doing your own thing. And even for somebody like you, you're in medical school, you know, if you're starting your clinical soon or whatever you have to do, what's the hospital scene going to be like? You know, if somebody like me is a musician, I'm lucky I'm in Florida here where the venues are opening. Some of these states, everything is still shut down at this time when we're recording. So it's a matter of like, don't keep yourself down. Don't look at all the success everybody else is having and say, where's my success? You know, that's when you stick your head lower in the book and you just keep pushing.
Yeah, and I feel like this is something that I don't remember. Were you around for Hurricane Charlie? In
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
you were here for Hurricane Charlie, and I don't know if there are any Punta Gorda, Port Charlotte natives listening to this right now, but that
2004.
I think that was an excellent example of how something really destructive. If anybody doesn't know what I'm referring to, there was a huge, massive hurricane, a Category 5/4. Ended up being a 4 when it hit, but it was a 5.
It was a 5.
It was definitely a 5. It came through, you know, it was a very dense hurricane and basically ripped Punta Gorda to shreds, completely destroyed everything. And Port Charlotte was a little bit spared in terms of the amount of destruction compared to Punta Gorda.
Well, the house we're sitting in recording this was the house we had to rebuild.
Right.
After
And-
my original house got
right.
half the roof torn off from the hurricane.
So Mike lost, you know, portions of his house. My grandparents lost portions of their house. My house was completely gone. But what ended up happening is it seemed like the places that endured the most destructive force from the hurricane rebounded the most spectacular 15, 20 years down the road.
Yeah.
And, you know, of course, there were some places back then that maybe are lost to memory, but there's a certain component to starting fresh or to be forced to sit back for a little bit where you kind of get the fire burning. Like,
Right. It's like, how can I turn this extremely negative situation into a very positive way to move forward in life? And I think that's what a lot of people aren't getting from everything going on is have that positive outlook, because everything has just been a lot of negativity, whether it's people or the news telling you or whatever. I think it has a toll. It takes a toll on people where you have to, and this is turning into a positivity podcast here, but it's about staying positive, you know, listen to music. Music can bring you up, you know, and make you feel like a positive person.
yeah, I think in today's age, it's so easy to kind of hop on the pessimist train just because negative media, negative social media, it's also prevalent. And there seems to be more of an advantage to getting people into a more negative mindset than there is to really looking how far we've come as a people and as a group. And so, yeah, this is really getting into some motivational
Speaking. Hey, there's a third job right here.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
If you feel like your life has been changed today, please comment down
Yeah,
below.
yes, definitely. And you know, talking about taking a situation and running with it, you know, some of you may, good segue
here it
right
comes.
here. Here it comes. This show is brought to you by Blues Beans Coffee. And you know, I just started this business, and it's a part of my parent company, Deja Ventures, and it is exactly that, Blues Beans Coffee. If you like good ground coffee, this is the coffee for you. It's a medium dark roast, swampland funk original blend, named after one of my original tunes. That is the outro music to this podcast as well. This coffee, like I said, is ground and ready to go into your coffee machine. It gives you wonderful tasting notes of brown sugar, hazelnut, and plum. Ingredients include 100% Arabica coffee, distributed by me. Everything is made in the USA. The beans come from Central and South America, roasted to perfection, and is ready to rock your taste buds. You can go to bluesbeanscoffee.com with Z's, not S's, because we're cool like that. And you can pick up your bag, 12-ounce bag of Blues Beans Coffee, Swampland Funk Original Blend today, medium dark roast. Now, Marcus is all fancy. He wants to drink tea, so I'll have to eventually get a tea going. But for now, you can get your coffee, again, at bluesbeanscoffee.com, Z's, not S's, and check it out.
Hey, I can't believe you'd call me out like that on the podcast.
Oh, yeah.
Coffee today's too strong for me. That's my problem. Everybody who hopped on the coffee train 5-10 years ago, pre Starbucks, and now the caffeine content is just too much.
It's like espresso. I need my espresso,
I'm
man.
like, you know what? Maybe I'll try to get a cup of coffee so I can study a little later tonight. And
Then
now
you're
it's
awake till
5 a.m.
6
and
a.m.
I'm messing around on the computer, looking up stuff on Facebook.
Conspiracy videos.
Yeah.
Well, see, that's why you got to try this coffee, man.
There you
It's
go.
not bitter. It's not too strong.
You got a
It's-
decaf version for me?
Regular's the way to go, man. Regular's the way to go. But yeah, and it all comes back to music. Whether it's someone like me who's doing it professionally or someone like Marcus who does it in his spare time or when you can, it makes you feel good. Music is a powerful thing. It can bring people together. It I think kind of, as close as we were as friends already, I think when you did start playing, it added another layer of being able to come together and talk about something else, and have that connection.
Like I said, I would always badger you to teach me something new. And then, I would always show up and be like, oh, Mike, I learned this cool song on the guitar and I played it for him. And then he'd be like, oh, that's cool. And then
Check
he'd be
this
like,
out.
yeah, check this out. Like totally shredding. And my eyes get wide. Like, and that's another component though, is I feel like I didn't really appreciate the skill that you had and other great musicians had. Until I tried to pick up an instrument myself and give it a go. But there, not only is it a technical in terms of the movement of the hand and almost like a hand-eye or ear-hand coordination.
Yeah.
But there's also the when it comes to improvisation and you like you mentioned in the music that you played, it's so heavy. The creative aspect in the moment to try something new that you heard or
Right.
implement something with your own unique spin on it. That's impressive. That's something that's really impressive. And when you do dip your toe into music, you can recognize that. Whereas maybe in the past you thought, oh, he wrote this song and this is all preordained and he practiced. And
Right.
You don't pick up on those moments of
Until you really try to do it
Right.
yourself. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, hey, and I always say, hey, it was Marcus who taught me how to play that Star Wars song. So I was like, hey, everybody brings something to the table here.
And the Star Wars song we're referring to is not one of those big John Williams orchestras. It's
Oh, come
it's
on.
the really boring one with it is. Yeah.
I can't do more. I'll get copyright. But no, well, hey, Marcus, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Episode 3 here.
Oh, absolutely. It was great. I hope to be back on again. Maybe we can do one over Zoom or whatever.
Yeah,
I don't know if
exactly.
we want Zoom though, but
But yeah, we'll definitely have you on very soon. So give it up for Marcus, everybody. Yes, big applause. Oh,
thanks
yeah.
so much for having me.
My pleasure, man. And hey, remember, people out there, wherever you listen to this podcast, you've been listening to the Imbasciani Chronicles, hosted by me, Mike Imbasciani. Special guest this episode, Marcus Nash. Soon to be Dr. Marcus Nash. And this outro music is Swampland Funk on Volume 4 of Blues and Beyond by Mike Imbasciani and his Blues Rockers. Thank you for listening to the podcast. Make sure to rate and review on Apple Podcasts. Share it with your friends. Share it all over the world. Or wherever you're listening to. Thank you very much. This is Mike Imbasciani, and we will talk to you next time.